Melaka.
Can't hear you.
Melaka.
Melaka. Melaka. All right. So anyway,
I just don't like this for an hour.
they told me to get a little
I can film
talk.
through the
Okay, caught up. So let's see now. I'm just going to check my report. Yep, everything's fine. Okay. So. My name is Vance Stevens, and since I'm recording this, actually I do a podcast. It's called Learning Together. It's at learningtogether.net. And the podcast goes occasionally. I always give the date on the podcast when I do recording. So this is June 28, 2019. We're at the ICCTAR conference in Melaka. The theme of the conference is Innovations for the Future and Wisdom of the Past. So what we're going to do is talk about Minecraft. Minecraft is a game. It's a game that, these guys happen to be playing Minecraft. They like to play Minecraft. So this is what the game looks like. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Minecraft. They're playing in creative mode right now. And they're just building. So anyway, I'm going to stand here so that I can record what's on the screen and record myself talking. And it looks like it's coming out okay. So basically, we're going to talk today about games and the different kinds of games they are, why they're important. And in particular, I don't teach students using games. I teach teachers, or I work with teachers, so that we can learn how to play games together. And we form communities of teachers who play these games. And so I'm going to tell you more about this community. And basically, let's see, I'd like to, maybe, that's very good. Maybe we could put the first slide up so that you can see what they're doing. They're building. He's building a house or something like that. That's cool. He's in creative mode. He has all the resources he wants. Unlimited resources. But if you play in survival mode, you have to go into it's called Minecraft because you have to mine for resources. You find things in the environment and you use those to build it. You have to stay alive because there are monsters in that world. So anyway, I just wanted to show you, I found out these guys were into Minecraft, and so I asked them to just show you what Minecraft is about. And now they're working on my slide presentation. So I'm going to show you two slides before I get these guys to come up and talk about what they were doing. This is the presentation we're in right now. Gamifying teacher professional development through Minecraft MOOC. And it's actually called EVO Minecraft MOOC, Electronic Village Online. And I'm Vance Stevens, and this is where we are today. So maybe, guys, I think everybody knows where they are. Let's go to the next slide, because this is a flipped presentation. All my presentations are flipped. Are you into flipped learning yourselves? You practice flipped learning? Some people think that it's important. Some people a lot of presenters like to give a presentation. At the end, they tell you, here's where the slides are, or maybe they don't even tell you. But here's where your slides are. I encourage you to go onto your devices and bring the slides down, because all the slides are hyperlinked, and you can find all the resources there. And actually, I've done two things. First of all, when I got started on this, I wrote everything out, and then I made the slides from that, and then I went a little from the slides. I went a little away from my prose. But you can read about the talk. You can sit here and read it if you want while I'm giving it, or just go to the second one, gives you the slides. This is at tinyurl.com. I like tinyurl.com because you can make a name that's meaningful. So it's always tinyurl.com/ and the one with the slides is Vance, V-A-N-C-E, 2019 ICCTAR. So it's easy to remember. It's a nice mnemonic thing. But in case you don't remember which came first, Vance 2019 ICCTAR, or ICCTAR first, I made a tiny URL for that one. So either of them either you're going to go to the prose where you get the link to the slides, or you go to the slides and you get the link to the prose. So, Sean, where are you? Here's Sean. Oh, come up here, Sean. This is Sean. Oh, by the way, I'm going to talk to Sean a minute while you guys visit this, because this is going to disappear in a minute. So this is Sean. Hi, Sean. How are you? Okay, good. And so tell me what you're doing.
They were building a house, basically in creative mode, where you can use anything you want. You don't have to survive, you don't have to struggle with mobs, you don't have to find a pickaxe, you don't have to do anything. You basically can just press E, open up your inventory, and take any item you want, and you can use it.
What do you prefer? Do you prefer survival or creative?
Because survival.
Survival is. Why do you like survival?
It's more, you have to really put thought into the process, you know. Because you want to build a house to survive, you have to find food, because you also have a hunger bar. Yeah.
Okay. And why do you think this is a waste of time?
Not really.
Of course not. Why not?
Because at first you learn the basic things about life, where you need to do this, do that, and also you can learn more things, such as, let's say, if you don't know any animals in real life, there's a lot of animals in Minecraft. Basically, ocelot.
What about science and engineering?
Science and engineering, from engineering, my point of view is there's something called a minecart and railway. You can build a very, very nice railway system if you are into it. And you also could use furnace, dispenser, redstone, which there's a lot of mechanics to it. Yeah, there's a lot of mechanics.
Okay. Let's see. And what about when you play? Do you play it by yourself, or do you play with other people?
Friends. So my friend right there, he set up a server for us to play. So we, on weekends when we're free together, we jam up together and we play together.
Do you play with people from other countries?
Not necessarily. Not really.
Okay. Okay. Do you think you play in English, right?
Play in English.
And how does it help your English?
Well, so far so good. I mean, like, some parts, like some words in Minecraft I don't really understand. I just Google them. For example, like Minecraft realms, I don't really understand what term of realms they are using, so I just Google them. Yeah.
Okay. What about learning how to do things in Minecraft? How do you learn that?
From learning, basically there are tutorial books where you can find online, so you just have to read and understand what is happening play by play.
And these are in English.
Yeah, these are in English.
What about video?
Most of the videos are from YouTube. Yeah, anyone can access YouTube right now. So YouTube has a lot of videos of guides, tutorials, and play-by-play made by other creators around the world, all in English.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Sean. I really appreciate it. Okay. Ready for the next slide? Okay. These are the guys. So they're having fun. Fun is an acronym I made up. Frivolous, unanticipated knowledge. And basically it's what I think you should do in class. You should engage in frivolous, unanticipated nonsense. Nonsense. That's what I just did, by the way. My plenary, I prepared an hour presentation, and I've already eaten up 10 minutes of it because this came along. So that's the frivolous, unanticipated part. And nonsense, I don't know, that's up to you to decide. Okay, can we have the next slide? Okay, so what is this about? This is about the role of games in language learning, and it's premised on the assumption that in order for games to be used effectively in language learning, the teacher or learner needs a clear or intuitive understanding of the affordances of games in fostering development in a target language. So that's what I was asking Sean about. Okay, next slide, please. So now the part in red is going to come back in the presentation. Let's pay particular attention to that. The idea really about what I've been doing with gamification for the last 5 years is learning how to do it, learning the affordances myself by playing. And in order to play, I asked Sean about a community. It's really difficult to play Minecraft on your own. You really need a community of players. So it's very important to do this. That's actually where all the information comes from, where he goes out and gets manuals, he goes to YouTube, he learns actually from his friends. His friends happen to be all in Malaysia, but a lot of people play online internationally. So a lot of language development comes from this. So basically, and if you want to know how to do it, you have to do it yourself. If you want to play games, you want to learn what games can do for language learning, well, go to Duolingo. When you go to the slideshow, you're going to, all these hyperlinks work. So you can click on the hyperlinks, you can go to, that Duolingo, for example, is it's a little app. Does anybody play Duolingo? Yeah, okay, all right, a few hands going up. Duolingo is really interesting if you want to learn another language. It asks you, are you new to the language, or do you already know the language? If you are, well, so suppose you want to do it in English with your students, you can tell them they already know the English, so take them to the placement test. So those are always kind of interesting. So anyway, that's where they can start. You can start learning how it works with your students by going to it yourself. Another one, I was talking to Brex today about Second Life. That's another place you can go to learn a little bit about how language learning works if you go to some communities that do that. Believe it or not, some people like World of Warcraft for learning languages. Does anybody here play World of Warcraft? Anybody here considered playing World of Warcraft? Oh, okay, yeah. All right. So anyway, that could be a little off the radical fringe for some people. But basically, if you do this, if you play games yourself to learn a language, you'll arrive at an understanding of the role of games in language learning through your own experience in that process. And if you're a language teacher, you'll be better positioned to guide other people in that process. So, okay, thank you. Next slide. All right. As I said, those words in red are going to come back to us in a minute. This is my first plenary, one of my first plenaries. I think my second one. I shocked an audience in Cairo by telling them there's no such thing as a language teacher. There's no such thing as a language teacher. Language teacher is a job title, but you're not really a teacher because nobody can teach a language. It's impossible. Language is always learned. Learners have to learn the language. They're only language learners. No such things as language teachers. If you want to read an article about that, you can go to this link down here, and it's the text of my talk where I explained that. Let's say, and by the way, this is about teaching versus training. You can train a language. We'll see more about that. Next slide, please. Okay. I don't know if anybody's, just my experience learning Spanish, if you learn Latin language, you're going to have to learn the verb endings, and how do you do that? Basically, there aren't a lot of teachers for that. But they'll present it to you, and they'll try to train you to do it. So I had one teacher who would go around the room and in a class of 50 people, and he would try to drill people in these verb endings. And when he came to me, I said something to him in Spanish, and he looked at me like, well, I said to the class, he's not doing this right. And then went on to the next person. So basically, the way you learn verbs is you have to contextualize. You have to go out and speak the language to people. You have to immerse yourself. You have to use it in context. But you can be trained to take a test on this. And another thing I do in all my slides, when I get an image, I generally check to see that it's an image that's shared on Creative Commons, because I don't want to break any copyrights. And so I attributed this to Atanata, and I gave the link where it came from. So it's another habit of mine in my slides. Okay, so here's another linguistic feat, is to try to teach a horse English and how to count. But actually, of course, the video says you can teach a horse to count. That's not true. You can only train a horse to count. If you want to know how to train a horse to count, you can visit these videos. There's the links to them right there. Basically, you need a map, something like that. You put that down in front of the horse starts pawing at it. And then you kind of train the horse. Well, you take the map away, and the horse gets the idea. So the horse can count with its feet. There's a video showing the horse counts. She asks, Corky, on a scale of 1 to 10, how pretty are you? Corky starts going like that. So anyway, it's a trick, obviously. Okay, next, please. Okay, in the last talk, we learned that there is cheating that goes on. Students cheat, but also teachers can cheat. Here's a teacher, an example of a teacher, not his real image, but anyway, he was training his students to take a test. And a lot of teachers will try to teach to the test, and we all get stuck in that dilemma. So, but actually that's kind of training. It's not really, well, you're not a teacher anyway. It's not your fault, because there's no such thing as a language teacher, right? So you're basically trying to get people to learn. But sometimes to get results, we get stuck on the training to the test. And so this teacher got really stuck on training to the test. And before a high-stakes test, he would write on the board A, B, C, and D. He would tell the students, mark on your test paper A, B, C, or D. And then he would start the tape. And the tape would start to play, and where he stood depended on what the answer was. And his results were phenomenal. He was getting, all the students were acing the test, and this eventually exposed him. So basically, this is an example of training. That's something we want to encourage, but a lot different from teaching. The next slide, please. This is one of my heroes. Have you ever heard of Stephen Downs? Now? Yeah, okay. Anybody heard of Stephen Downs? Yes, okay, Dynamos. Stephen Downs gave a talk at a Webheads in Action Online Convergence in 2007. I'm going to tell you more about my communities of practice later on, but Webheads in Action put on 3 free international online conferences lasting 3 days each in 2005, 2007, 2009. One year we had Stephen Downs, and he told us in simple words the difference between teachers and learners. A teacher models and demonstrates. Like, for example, I want to model to you the correct way to get Creative Commons images off the internet, so I model that for you in my slide presentations. And demonstrates. Students practice and reflect. Okay? What do you think about that? Is that pretty simple? 4 words describing teachers and students? Sound reasonable to you? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, there's another of my heroes named David Ward, also came to speak at our Webheads in Action Online Convergence, one of them, one time. He has a blog called 2 Cents Worth. He says that to redefine what it means to be a teacher, I try to present myself as a master learner, suggesting that part of what teachers should be is constant and resourceful learners. Teachers should always be learning. Therefore, a teacher, a master learner, that's what you are. You're a master learner, you're not a teacher. Well, you are a teacher, that's your job title, you get paid for that. But you can't teach language. So you have to be a master learner and guide other people into the process. You have to model and demonstrate, practice and reflect all the time. You're always doing that. That's why you're here. You're reflecting. And you're going back to model and demonstrate, and then you'll learn something else and practice that and take that back into your class. So, and if you want to read his blog post, it's the link at the bottom of the slide there. Next slide, please. Okay, so remember the text in red? It's come back to us now. So remember, if you incorporate gaming in your own language learning, you will arrive at an understanding of the role of games in language learning through your own experience in that process, and you'll be in a better position to guide others in the process. In other words, you'll have practiced a little gaming and you'll reflect on it. How can I use this with my students? You take it in, you model and you demonstrate it, and then you start to understand intuitively that process. What are the affordances of this for your language learners? But there's a corollary. The corollary is if you teach using games but don't use games to learn languages, how can you effectively teach languages using games? That's different from not can you. You can teach languages using games. Everyone does. I mean, I'm sure in class, how many of you use games in class? Games in class, okay. How many of you use games in your own language learning? Okay, much fewer. Some, okay, very good, excellent. Okay, so, but basically, okay, that's okay, you can leave it there. The more you actually do the game, play the games yourself, the more you're going to understand how the games work in language learning. So, why do teachers need to play games? If you want to understand how games are meant to be used with students, teachers need to themselves become gamers. And how you use the games, or more importantly, how your students use them, will fall on a scale of true learning to something closer than training. So we're going to talk now, we're going to think now about the different kinds of games there are and how they fit on that scale from learning to training. Okay, next slide. You guys are doing a good job today. I went to a conference in Penang, Pelta. This guy, Hidar Abdullah, I don't know, does anybody know him? He's in Kuala Lumpur. He gave a talk on gamification versus game-based learning. So there's two kinds of things right there. There's gamification and game-based learning. Basically, game-based learning is probably what you're used to. It's using games to meet learning objectives. So you have an objective, you design a game for it. The learning is achieved by playing a game. So when people play the game, they learn something. Like we were playing gravel on the floor this morning, learning spelling, learning how to get words from these tiles. And so you learn by playing the game. It's cooperative, it could be digital or non-digital. It's usually what's competitive, serious educational games with shrink-wrapped variety. That's what you, versus gamification though. Gamification is something that's starting to creep into our lives. It's using game elements to engage. So it's something outside the game. It's not in the game, it's outside the game. It works on points, levels, badges, achievements, and learners are motivated by extrinsic rewards. So that's something to keep in mind as we continue on. Next slide. Okay, here's a non-digital game-based learning game. Well, I used it once in a class that I was teaching in Hawaii one time. I put it on the floor, I got my students around to play the game, and I discovered quite to my surprise that it produced a lot of telegraphic language. The students didn't really talk much outside of just roll the dice and throw money down and say, pay me. I think they all learned to pay me very well. But anyway, basically I was surprised. I thought there would be more conversation around the game, but there wasn't. And there's no incentive to learn language in order to improve or play the game. So that's what I found anyway. Again, it's a Creative Commons image that I borrowed there. Okay, next slide. Okay, here's a little wisdom from the past. I don't know, has anybody heard of this game, Mystery House? If you were going to TESOL conferences back in 1984, you might have heard of Armando Baltra, who, this game, I think it was invented in 1980, but by 1984, the Sierra had put it into the public domain. They weren't making money from it, so they threw it into the public domain. It's a game where you enter a house and you go climb stairs, and then you say, open door, and I think, oh, there's a map there. There's a map, there's a key. Take key, you know, so you're constantly playing, doing the game like that. You're looking for, you go in the house and you meet, there are some people there, and the people one by one start disappearing, and you realize there's a murderer in the house. And you have to find the murderer before the murderer finds you. So, when I was playing this game with my students and just playing this two-word command thing, when one of the students took a picture from the wall, I said, take a picture, they took the picture, and there's a nail in the wall. He happened to have a hammer in his inventory, so he said, hit nail. And the wall opened and exposed corridors and passages. Wow, I mean, it was an electric moment in language learning for me. And also for our class. It kind of just wowed the class. We didn't expect that. You can watch the game being played on YouTube, or you can learn about it at Wikipedia. Okay? Here's a more modern, do you know this game? Have you played this? This is a free game. You can get it from your Relo office in the State Department. And that's where you get a free copy. So if you're on my slideshow, you can click there and you can learn more about that. You can see a trailer. Have you got the trailers queued? This is trace effects. You want to try and play trace effects and see what it does? Basically, you take this, you become this guy Trace. This is games-based learning. No? Okay, it won't work. Okay, no problem. You can do that yourself. You can go to the game. You can see it's a game where you move around and you see things, kind of like a shoot 'em up game. You don't shoot anything. You interact with the players in the story, but always in predictable ways. In other words, there's nothing. There's an algorithm built in. You soon detect how that algorithm works, and you can repeat a lot of actions. You're looking for the right solution. This guy came to us from the future. He was playing around with time machine that had been invented in the future. He pushed a button and he popped into the past and he woke up in your backyard. And so basically he needs help to find his way back to the future. So that's what the game is about. It has quite a lot of materials that go with it, so it's really good. In the way they introduce the materials, they say that there's a comic book, for example. They tell you that you should have your students read the comic after they play the game. But there's also a genre of games called escape the room games, where you're supposed to go online and find the cheats. And that's how a lot of the language development takes place. So if you get stuck in the game, you go find the cheats. So the comic books are actually kind of cheats. So, you know, it's a flipped approach. Oh, what's happened? Okay, let's go to the next slide. Oh, that's not the next slide. There's the next slide.
Oh.
Okay. Dr. Brown was talking about Kahoot earlier. Kahoot, do you think it's games-based learning, or is it gamification? What would you say? Gamification? Okay. I don't know if it has all the elements for gamification. Let's go to the, if you want to go there, there's a link to it. Next slide, please. So, I think it doesn't feel like gamification to me, although it does have some elements, it certainly has some interesting elements of games, but basically, if you go to the website, it says play, you click on the play, and you're going to play by yourself. So you don't, the way it's played is if you're a teacher, you can get the game, and you can play it for your, you can put it on a classroom and play it with your students. They can see this, and they have devices. They log onto the game using devices, but they don't have to use their real name. It doesn't track what they're doing. It doesn't give you any real basis unless you keep your own records. And I found it impossible to do that because of the students never use their real names. But anyway, so it feels to me more like games-based learning. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, in case you didn't get the question, there it is in Norwegian. So the question in Norwegian, I translated it. When did large Norwegian quit writing lexicon on paper? Google translation, obviously. And what do you think, 2000, 2010? Come on, answer it. Okay, so that's what the game does. It plays you music and you have to answer. Then when it times out, the correct answer gets some points. Kind of like the games you play on airplanes with other people in other seats trying to beat them. So, Dr. Brown suggests, I asked, is this learning or reinforcement of training? To me, in the context where I've used it in, it's always seemed like training, because I didn't do what Dr. Brown suggested, which is to augment this game with algorithms which would recycle answers so that you actually memorize does that. But basically, if you use this game in context, an extended context with more, making what you learn in the game part of wider activity for the things that the students do, it makes a good part of that training. But a lot of teachers that were, in my experience, use it as a filler at the end of the period and sort of jazz up the class and get to the end of it. Okay, next slide. Memorize, I think, is a better example of structural gamification. Here are the reasons. Teachers set up lessons in profiles. Players have to be logged in. Players give themselves identity images, or they're given them. They don't have to be their own image. It could be anything. So there's a little identity there, as opposed to trace. When you become trace, you take his identity, so it's not really your identity. There's a leaderboard, and this is anybody in the world who plays this game comes up on the leaderboard, and their points. Actually, it's a very good way to motivate students. Some people complain about it and say it exposes students. It's not kind of them, but in my classes, it was always effective. The students were very competitive about getting up on the game. Another important thing about gamification is that in gamification, everyone starts at 0. In your classes, where do people start? Start at 100, right? And as you go through the class, you start losing points. You get to an 85. Now you're at 60. Okay, in gamification, you just builds up. They just give you thousands of points. So it's much more motivating. Players gain in level, so you can become a larger level player. You can go and find games in other people's profiles. Teachers can group you because you're in a profile. You can group the profiles into class sets. So it's a very gamified situations. Next slide. Here's another one that Dr. Brown mentioned also, Quizlet. When I play, well, Quizlet works on, there are matched pairs. So for example, we used to use them a lot in vocabulary development. So you have a word and a definition. And it mixes the word, or in this case, a translation. So I've found though, in working with my students or with me personally, because I used to like to play this version of the game because then I could actually participate. I could try to find the Arabic word and match it to the English. The students were doing the opposite. But I find that this doesn't really, we found, because we didn't have that wider context built in very well, that it doesn't, if you're using this game to prepare students for a test, and you're going to give them the more or less the same thing on the test that you gave them in the game, it will work. But if you try to expect the students to take this kind of thing and actually be able to use the words in context, it just falls over. So, but it is structurally gamified. Just by doing that on the screen, I got first place and unlocked the match badge. So I'm ready to move on. In the slides as well. Okay, here we go. By the way, this is an example of structural gamification. I used this, there's a guy named Squires who wrote this blog post. You can look at it. I used that because he mentioned language learning in his definition of structural gamification. So basically, there's two kinds of gamification. There's structural gamification and content gamification. So this is very important to keep in mind. Content gamification, to me, is the very more interesting one. But basically, structural gamification tries to get people to do mundane things more. So the best approach is where the game and game mechanics have learning value in themselves, where learning is intrinsic to the gameplay. So for example, if you want to do something, if you want to reward, well, standard operating procedure or learning a language, this could be one example. So you can get people to play more by giving them these rewards. And this one is from TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor wants me to make more recommendations of places I've been to. So they gave me some points, and they told me you need 230 points more to become a level 3 contributor. So I'm getting gamified already. Okay? Okay. So games-based learning versus content. I think we missed a slide. Can you go back one? There's a slide of a guy named Cat. No? Maybe that's where that slide went. Well, anyway, if you've got the slideshow, you've got it yourself. So the Cap in his blog post said that content gamification is gamification where users are able to alter the content of the game, and therefore it has gamified elements. With structural gamification, you're not able to alter the content of the game. So structural gamification builds in rewards to get you to play the game more. Content gamification gets you to play the game more by allowing you to change the content. Okay, next slide. Okay, so examples of trace effects is a games-based learning approach. Content is finite. It's always the same. There's nothing more. But in Minecraft, as you saw, content is infinite, especially if you go into survival mode, where they were using this flat map. But in survival mode, you have hills, trees, deserts. You have infinite biomes to explore, and the game is always unique and interesting. In game-based learning, you'll notice repetitions repetitions in your game, but in content gamification, you're always going to different situations. In games-based learning, once you finish the game, you're probably not going to be very interested in playing it again. You might learn from playing it again. If you play trace effects 2 or 3 times, you're going to learn more English. But probably you're ready to go on to something else. Whereas in Minecraft, it tends to bring people always wanting to play the game, and when they play the game, they're going to be interacting with each other, and they learn from their community. trace effects is probably something you'll be more comfortable with because it's designed for people using ESOL. But to learn to play Minecraft, you have to learn the game in the company of others. Okay? So, let me tell you a little bit about Minecraft. It was invented in 2009, or it was released in 2009. There's a guy named Joe Levin who went on to create Minecraft engine, which is taking Minecraft and putting it in a package in an environment where it was much easier for teachers to implement. He's very famous for that. He got into the game when in 2010 he saw his daughter playing it. He was amazed at how she solved problems, developed a spatial understanding, accelerated her reading and writing skills because she wanted to be able to interact with other players. We're going to see more examples of that in a moment. So I was listening to Joe Levin on podcasts and listening to other people who were getting into Minecraft at about this time. In 2011, I suggested to a place where I worked that we should get Minecraft licenses. And that place didn't really like to, but they didn't listen to teachers, they never bought anything new. So they didn't listen to me. But anyway, it took me about 4 years before I started EVO Minecraft MOOC. Okay, that link is to the interview with Joe Levin. Okay, this EVO Minecraft MOOC. Next slide. Here's an example of I was playing in survival world. I'm playing with somebody in Japan. I'm full of arrows because I've just encountered a skeleton, and this is a spider who's just coming along. So it's kind of a dangerous situation in an interesting environment. But basically, the biggest problem preventing teachers from learning Minecraft is finding a community, because it's not a game you can really play alone and effectively learn. You want your students to play in a community. So whether they're playing in their class or they're playing with people from other countries, or English will be the lingua franca, gets very interesting. But in order for you to learn how to do that, you have to find a community. So it has to do with a participatory culture surrounding the game. So players who are in communities already tend to be people like these guys. And it's very hard, their teachers aren't going to let you join that community. You know, you can't have adults in a child's community. So it's difficult to, my solution is basically to start EVO Minecraft. Okay. That link will take you to more information about that. Okay. So this all comes from my experience with communities in practice. In 1998, I started my first one. It was called Webheads, Writing for Webheads. It was about having English learners come online and start writing for each other. And I put this online on a web page. Then teachers got very interested in it. In 2002, Webheads in Action came along. We started intermingling with something called EVO, Electronic Village Online, which I should really tell you about. Does anybody participate in Electronic Village Online? If not, you should. Yes? Okay, we got one back there. Dr. Hall. Okay. So every January and February, EVO comes on. If you want to find out more about it, you go to evosessions.pvworks.com. It's been going on for since 2001, I'm sorry. And it's something you should learn about because they teach all kinds of things. Pronunciation, how to teach pronunciation, Escape the Room games was one of the sessions last time, and I've been doing EVO Minecraft MOOC for the last 5 years. So I started that in 2015, and if you want to read more about it, there's some links there. Okay. It came from this guy. This is Philip. Philip is the son of one of my colleagues in EVO. Her name is Mariana Smolchitz. And her son, Philip, was becoming fluent in English in Croatia by playing Minecraft. So he did it by, he's watching videos in English about how to play Minecraft. He has his own YouTube channel. where he interacts with other people in Minecraft. He plays online with people in English. They use Discord or some VoIP software so they speak to each other. This is the interesting thing, though. Actually, we visited this family in Croatia, Bobby and I did, and he told me that when he started watching these videos in English, he and his brother, who's a little younger than he is, it's all gibberish. He said that eventually they started making sense. So wanting to understand something in English so badly that you keep watching it and meaning emerges, that's language learning, isn't it? Okay, so no teacher is there, he's teaching himself, he's learning himself. Okay, next slide please. All right, so basically we created EVO Minecraft MOOC in 2 steps. One, Mariana interviewed her son for an article that we published in, I'm on the media editor for Tesla EJ, Tesla Electronic Journal. Here's a link to that article. She interviewed him about how he developed his language skills using Minecraft. And because she didn't have time, I wrote the literature search for it. That's significant in a moment. So the important thing is, though, we approached this in a flipped way. Philip knew how to play Minecraft. Mariana and I didn't. We wanted to learn. So how do we learn? We decided, okay, we'll make an EVO session. We'll start an EVO session. Now, most people who start an EVO session will take something like business English. They know a lot about business English. They'll make an EVO session to teach other people about business English. That's coming into the master learner cycle at the front end to start modeling and demonstrating. But we decided to come in the middle. We come in the part where we're practicing and reflecting because we don't know how to play Minecraft. But we want to get other people, we want to form a community so that other people will teach us how to play Minecraft. So that was our secret. That's how we did it. Next slide. So in the literature search, I identified a number of people who were doing interesting things in Minecraft. This guy's Jeff Kuhn from Ohio University. He's teaching writing, problem solving, emergencies in writing, and he decided to create emergencies in Minecraft so the students would write about how to deal with them and use this language in their project. David Dodgson taught English in Turkey. These are basic Minecraft books. I think the green one is the basic one. That one is in Turkish. It's been translated into many languages. He was teaching in Turkey, and his son was going to the school where his students were going to. He found in an English bookstore the red one, and he bought that for his son, and his son took it to school and showed it to his colleagues. And all of a sudden, they started going to that store and they were buying these books in English and reading them. So here again, something they would never have done on their own. He was having trouble getting them to read anything in English. And now they're going out and buying books and reading Minecraft in English. Anyway, these guys joined our course. There were just a couple of people who joined us and mentored us. And so we had a lot of experts. We got experts in the community. Go to the next slide. There's another expert mentioned there. This is a guy named Mircea Petrashcu. This is a very interesting video. He built this rail. Sean mentioned the rail system with redstone. So the redstone powers things uphill. He built a roller coaster, and you can see the video. It's really quite interesting. Basically, he built a logic gate where you ask people questions and you have to flip the switches a certain way that lets you into the room. That's just an example of what you can do with this kind of thing. You can make you can open Easter eggs for rewards. Okay, next slide. Okay, the last thing I want to introduce you to is another community of Minecraft called Kotoba Miners. Kotoba means language dialect or something like that in Japan. You know? Where is it in Japan? So these guys, the ideas are mining for words. Not necessarily words in English, but they're also people trying to learn Japanese. So in 2005, James York started, there's an interview with him right here where this comes from. He started playing World of Warcraft in guilds of Japanese speakers, so he went to who went to learn Japanese. So again, he's getting the experience of learning through games how to use World of Warcraft to learn language, build his skills. But when Minecraft became released, remember that was in 2009, he became convinced that this was the language game that he'd been looking for, and we're going to go through a couple of slides and I'll explain why that happens, and that'll be the end of this presentation. So he set up a server for his Japanese English language learning students called Kotoba Miners, and he created a series of English language lessons for that. Next slide. Okay. He asked some native English speakers to come online and play with his students so that they would have people to help the students develop their language. The Japanese students were more task-based. They did the exercises. But by the way, because their English level was so low, he told the volunteers that they might learn some Japanese. So when the students came online and met the English speakers, once their course was finished, they stopped going back to the server. But the English speakers there, wanting to learn Japanese, stayed on the server and played. So he suddenly had people who wanted to learn Japanese on his server. Next slide. Okay. Now, why did he choose Minecraft for this, as opposed to something like Second Life or World of Warcraft? So he said the problem with World of Warcraft and Second Life was the lack of control over content. You can change content in Second Life. I don't know about World of Warcraft, I don't play it. But basically, you're kind of stuck with the content more as it is than with, he said they both had a distance between users and content creators. Okay, so the next slide. Okay, so why Minecraft? Minecraft is simple. It's pretty easy to, once you get the hang of it, you can do it easily. Teachers and learners all have control over content. There's no restriction on changing content. So, and the critically salient affordance, remember, you missed Cap's slide, but the ability to change content is what makes content gamification so interesting. So, control over content for all players. Oh, here's the quotes from Cap that we missed. The application of game elements and game thinking to alter content make it more game-like. So that's the critical secret for Minecraft. Okay, next slide, please. Maybe the last one. Yes, this is it. This is the end. Okay, so we did reach the end of the slides. Remember, you can get a text version of the talk here, and you can find the complete slide set here with all the working links. If you want to contact me, there's my email address, or you can go to my podcast. By the way, this recording, if it works fine, I'll put it up on the podcast site. This is, by the way, Learning Together, episode 414. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for attending, ladies and gentlemen. Plenary then will take place later, so now you may be free to go to your own respective parallels and respective rooms. Thank you for attending.